Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Back.
Happy Monday. We're back, baby. We're so back. Best day of the week.
And everybody's at home today for now.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
all home. It's a nice feeling.
Conference season. I'm heading out tomorrow. So
I know. I get to pick you up at the airport, big guy. Let's go.
That's right.
I still have to buy my flights for Burma. I'm like,
Same.
I just keep pushing it off as if they're gonna get cheaper. But
yeah, they're not. I've even bought my ticket to Burma, so whatever. We'll get there. We'll get there sometime.
We'll get there.
Yeah. After this week. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Good Morning Hospitality, the #1 hospitality podcast where we cover all the top trending news and stories. I'm brought to you by Michael Golden, Brandy Canale, and myself, Will Slickers. We have a special guest on today. For any new listeners, we don't usually do guests. We have our guest host, Jamie Lane, who comes on once a month, but usually guests are a very special occasion on the show. So we had Madeline List, who is actually the research manager now at Focusrite, not senior analyst, as we have her incorrect title from the first time she was on the show. She's going to come on and we're going to talk about social media and how it's shaping the future of travel. Before we bring on Madeline, anything for you guys before we jump into all the stuff, or are we ready to rock and roll?
Ready to rock and roll. Kind of a coasting week. No major updates.
If anyone's going to the glamping show this week, let me know. I'll be out there. And then also at the same time, jealous of all of those at VRWS out in Porto.
Same.
That's a great one. Our buddy Sam from Bestie is out there, so don't get too jet lagged. Enjoy the trip.
Yeah, have fun. And Jamie Lane's going to be out there after his trip in Barcelona, so we got people flying all over the world. But while they're doing that, we're here broadcasting for you. So without further ado, let's bring on the one and only Madeline List. Madeline, welcome back.
Hey, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. How are we doing? Have you had your second, third cup of coffee yet? Or are we still on number one? Making our way through?
We're still on number 1, but I'm getting pumped. I'm surprisingly energetic for Monday.
Well, we got to send you some of our Well and Good Morning coffee.
Yes.
Did you know we have a coffee brand, Madeline?
Yeah.
No, you guys are just taking over.
That's right. That's right.
Look at all this expansion.
Coming to a hotel near you.
She's like, look at all the expansion. I love it. Well, it's been a while since we had you on. So maybe for just giving the listeners and live viewers a quick recap, tell us about your role at Focusrite and what we're going to talk about today when it comes to social media and the way that property managers or hosts, whatever you want to call them, can actually actively use it throughout the trip planning process for travelers.
Sure. So I am a market researcher at a company called Focusrite. We're a market intelligence firm that just focuses on those travel, tourism, and hospitality sectors. So thinking about market research for our areas of the industry is just my full-time job. And I do what are called our special projects at Focusrite, which is a fancy way of saying that I switch the topics that I study from year to year instead of only studying one topic, which is fun. And it also gives me some really you could say like layered context for what we're going to put through, because I study the short-term rental industries and a lot of things in hospitality. But this year I spent a lot of time studying how travelers use social media to plan and share their trips. So we're going to layer those two kinds of expertises here today, try to have some good conversation about this massive marketing channel and how the heck it's being used for travel specifically.
I love it. Well, where do we even begin? Because actually, before we even maybe start, for the listeners, there's going to be a link in the show notes. You can actually purchase this report through that link if you want more in-depth visual content for us that are going to be describing some of the stuff. We won't get through the whole report, so obviously go to that link. A little disclaimer there for you guys. And then, yeah, Madeline, where do we even begin? Because I think a lot of people think of social media and influencers, and it kind of can get a little overwhelming. They might be like Brandy and be a little, less optimistic about the ROI of influencers versus Michael, who is actually very excited about it. So, Michael, you seemed pretty eager to raise your hand there. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say maybe just walk us through the journey that travelers go on when they're using social media and end up booking, and what some of those typical things that happen, whether it's video or still photos, what if it's luxury or budget, just broad-based data that can get us going.
Sure. So I think some of the core data that's helpful to understand is that for people who use social media to plan their trips, they start to engage super, super early in the process. We see that across categories, whether it's for transportation, accommodation, you have this contingent of people that is really starting to collect information about their trips before the time is even carved out to take the trip, before they've put in the PTO request, before they bought any plane tickets. Anything like that, social media is where they go to start to investigate their options. However, we see that content is really most effective at helping them change their minds and make a different decision if it comes within really a couple months of their trip. So the soft process starts collecting information, letting it sink in a little bit, but then the information that's really going to affect them, it's got to come much closer to the trip, which I want operators to consider if they have a high season or if they're trying to run a promotion and they really want people to book a certain time. You really have to think about that 2-month window before and pushing extra content then. And then the other thing that I thought was super interesting from this research was that we have about 6 in 10 trip planners on social media who said that they made a different decision because of content that they saw on social media. They decided to visit a place, they decided to book something because of social media. But some of those decisions would not be recorded in traditional channels because they're making calls about things like, should I go to a short-term rental or should I go to a hotel? Should I take a plane or should I take a train? So a lot of that influence from social media kind of goes undetected from what we can see. And that invisible impact is something that was a really interesting takeaway from this report.
I love it. And go ahead, Brandy.
Oh no, it's funny. I was just thinking I have like in my Instagram, one of my saved folders is like dream trips. And I feel like I just constantly like put like that in a bucket and then it just stays there because there's too many Amman resorts there. The budget can't stretch that far. But I do like the planning part, like the nebulous planning part of like where you'd like to go starts much earlier. And then I like that what you said about the 2-month window. That's a really like tangible takeaway. So I think especially for low season or your shoulder seasons, if you're really trying to push that, that's a good window for operators to know that, maybe try to stagger your campaigns then.
Yeah. And I remember not a couple episodes ago, but a while ago, we talked about this topic somewhat, and the biggest issue comes into attribution. I think a lot of people want to know that their social media content is working, and it's not just a fun thing for them to employ someone from college to create TikToks or whatever, but also the actual metrics piece, right? And so I would love to know, just from your guys' research and study, was there anything that kind of stood out when it came to actually tracking the metrics, or was it really just about the inspiration of when they saw the ideal trip or the glamping tent or the whatever it may have been? I would love to know from there.
The main takeaway for measurement is just that it's incredibly difficult and that there can be a lot more going on for all the metrics you are able to see on your back end. So, one of the really interesting stats that we have in this report is that even among people who had a purchase or visitation conversion for travel from social media, only 30% said that one of their next steps was clicking on a link in the bio or clicking on a link in the post. So we love click throughs. Everyone loves like the clean metric that is a click
Mhm.
through. But even the people who are making different decisions are not necessarily clicking through. And you get a lot who go to search engines, you get a lot who go to Google Maps, you get a lot who will verify on review sites like TripAdvisor. So important to understand that a lot of the impact that your content can have would not necessarily appear cleanly in a
Mhm.
KPI like a click through. I think it's really important to think about the broader strategy of the content and if you are fulfilling your own goals and making quality content and content that communicates certain messages or certain things about the brand. Those are important to keep in mind in addition to whatever engagement KPIs that you want to use, because not all of the true impact of the content is going to clearly filter through those types of engagement KPIs. There's just so much that happens in people's minds that doesn't leave a clear digital footprint.
Yeah, I one of your figures in the report is a question. I find social media is more useful for passively learning about travel than actively planning the trip. And the majority of converters and non-converters say that that describes them somewhat well or very well. So it's like people are using this to really gather data and formulate maybe like the scaffolding of their trip, but not to do like this is the very specific thing that I'm booking. And I think that that's, I mean, you're just getting targeted with so much information that it makes sense that you're not using all that information exactly. You're using it, to kind of put together the collective idea of your trip.
Yeah. So hammering into that a little bit, Madeline, we know 2 months out is what you said when it's kind of the prime time to start running social media campaigns. Where do people run those? What should they invest in? What channels? What type of content? Any other demographics to share would be really helpful.
I think that the visual first types of content are super helpful. I know that that's not groundbreaking marketing information to push images or to push short form video. That's important to keep in mind. For the short-term rental space, especially, something that I would also want to consider is that we see that parents traveling with kids under 18 are actually very engaged in social media. They have these higher rates of conversion through social media. Parents need tips. They want to understand, especially from other parents out there in their networks, what's helpful, what kind of traveling works well. They feel a lot of pressure to create memories when the kids are little. So that's a big category, both for short-term rentals and for social media, where we see this nice overlap. And it's good to think about if you're putting out family content, if you are like a family forward accommodation, if that's being shown, if that's being communicated, if there are kid-friendly activities that you can see on your social media, or if families are featured in the images and the collateral themselves. And then I also think it's important on kind of a content level, more so than the specific, image versus video versus length of video conversation. It's also important to understand if you're giving guidance, if you're helping to give advice through the content. There's a lot of just shiny marketing that gets put out there, and it can be beautiful and it can help attract guests, but it doesn't necessarily help guests understand if a property is for them or not, if an option is for them or not. And one of the issues that came up throughout this research is that a lot of social media content can be beautiful and can give you ideas, but can lack advice. And then people hit this snag in terms of how much this can help in their trip planning process if the content isn't actually guiding them or giving them an idea of if this is a good idea for them to book. Because they can see if something's beautiful, that doesn't mean the option's for them.
And then
Yeah.
doing it like in-house versus influencers versus user-generated content. What does the data show converts, does well, doesn't do well?
Well, we love user generated content because it's free, right? That's one of the things that everyone adores about it, is that you don't need to pay any sort of collaboration fees if people are going to post about you. Uh, there are some big strengths to it, because we asked people who shared their trips on social media if they were approached by others to get advice or to ask more questions. And we find that in general, people have their networks engaged with them. If they post about a trip, they get questions from friends and family about it. So this can be really powerful, but it has the obvious drawbacks that the people's personal friends and family networks, they're a little bit limited. You can't specifically time user generated content to go out at a specific time that's helpful for your marketing schedule. And you can't necessarily have a lot of control or a lot of editorial say about what your customers are posting about you. You just kind of have to give them that great brand experience and then hope that they communicate what you would like them to communicate. So everyone loves that it's free, but it just lacks some of the controls that you would have over content you make yourself or collaborate on with an influencer. So because of that, I would encourage everyone to think about where this can fit in, that you can encourage guests to post about your properties, but just consider the fact that if you want more control and if you want a more tightly regulated marketing campaign, you're going to have to go with either in-house content or some other type of collaboration.
Yeah, I think the user generated content is great for like reels and stories for like your Instagram. So you can just have kind of like a deep well of content. It's just a repost. If you don't want to repost something, you don't have to, but it kind of it keeps your account alive and, and current, and does show that like point of view of someone who is literally just there. And then I also I found, at least through our influencer work, that micro influencers have been way better to work with on a number of different metrics. But, so you're going to have a smaller audience, but the engagement is super high. And that we found is way more valuable than when we've had sort of bigger influencers. We don't get the same engagement. We don't get the same authenticity. Like we had a girl come do a pre-Taylor Swift, like a stay, and show everyone like where they could go. And it felt so real. It felt like your friend doing it instead of like, I think you can kind of tell when it's a paid ad, basically.
Can I ask a question maybe to both of you, B, Brandy, and Madeline, in the sense of, can you define what a micro influencer truly means to you? Because I think a lot of people think of micro maybe as like 10,000 or maybe 100,000. So there's a big range gap. So Madeline, for you guys on the report, what is your definition of macro and micro influencers? And then Brandy, I would love to know if your work in the past is aligned in that same category or number range.
We didn't differentiate between macro and micro just because it's a lot to ask travelers to also remember how many followers an influencer had, in addition to remembering who influenced their decisions. I've heard numbers like 10,000 put out, but then I hear that the 10,000 are the nano influencers, and then I hear the under 100,000 also for the micro influencer stat. But I don't know if there's one formalized industry definition.
Yeah, I would say we've considered kind of 10,000 and under to be the micro influencer, and kind of around there. And then obviously, and I think to your point, like it kind of differs depending on what industry you're in, like what is your audience size normally, and then it kind of ranges from there. And I also think, really, if you're going to be engaging with an influencer as an operator, and you really have to look at all of their metrics. They might have a lot of followers, but do they have good engagement, that kind of thing. That's why I tend to think that micro influencers are a bit more impactful, because their audience is small, but it is mighty, and they might really actually click through and book a stay if they follow that person.
And also something to think about is, will this influencer be open if something's not their favorite, if they don't like something? I know that brands are hesitant in some ways when they see that influencers are willing to say if something just doesn't fit for them or it doesn't feel right. But then it creates this authenticity crisis if you have these major accounts that are completely positive, because the audience starts to question how real the reviews are if they seem to like everything. So it's this double-edged sword there, that obviously you want to give them the best experience possible and feel like you're definitely going to get really good feedback and really good content out of it. But the truth is that you can sacrifice your own credibility and the value of the campaign if you only work with people who are kind of needlessly positive about all of their travel experiences.
So you touched on this earlier, but after they've been influenced, the traveler, the guest, what are the next steps that you guys see in the data? You said they don't usually click links and make it really easy, trackable ROI. What are the most common and frequent kind of processes from looking to booking?
Either a general search query or a Google Maps search to see where things lie relative to one another. So important, first of all, to treat social media as one piece of your total online presence, because it's not the bottom of the funnel. And anyways, we don't necessarily have the tools at this moment to have travelers often really book right there on social media. So right now, we have to consider it as if it's just
We'll get into that in a second.
top or mid funnel place, and that the bottom is going to be elsewhere. So a lot of people are going to search, they're going to Maps, they're going to TripAdvisor before they actually book something that they saw on social media.
So on that, and this is a question I think for everybody, but when do we think the OTAs are going to start being a booking engine? Because if they're already influencing 40, 50, 60% of trips, why would they not want to have a piece of that conversion?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we look at Airbnb as a really great example of this company that is attempting to be one of all of the things, a social media company, an OTA, like controlling kind of being a part of every aspect of that journey. And so I think that they're the first ones that we'll get to see how that plays out in real time, if they can get people to engage on their platform like it's social media. I don't know. The execution of all of these things, I think, is very difficult. You have a lot of uncontrollable parts and not the core strengths of some of these businesses. Like the OTAs are really good at getting you to book, showing you all the options. Okay, you have a counterpoint, Marco?
I do, because 2 or 3 weeks ago, we covered that Expedia's B2B white label service is worth $25 billion.
True.
If I'm a biz dev person at Expedia, I'm going to Meta's office and saying, "Hey, Facebook and Instagram are the number 1 and 2 converters for trip inspiration. Embed this link right here, and let's just capture the entire audience."
Yeah, it is kind of surprising. You know how there's the different shop, you can go on Instagram shop and click like the different items, that it's not as easy for any sort of travel site like that. It doesn't really strike me as being that much different if it's just an embedded link, but that aspect seems to have eluded them.
So it's because of all the dynamic pricing and the variance in dates is just so much more complex than shopping inventory of, do you want these leggings in medium versus large? Do you want them in pink versus green? The number of options that are there when you go to book an accommodation, it's a lot. And then it means it's a different product to build and a different challenge to add that on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think like from the OTA's perspective, and Michael, to your question, like Brandy made a good point. Airbnb, I believe, is trying to become a social media channel themselves. So I don't think they're too worried about the booking ability through social yet. But then also, I think, we have ChatGPT, and then you have Meta and all these other companies creating their own AIs. And Meta, I can't remember if it's Llama 3 still, or if they updated their AI, but they're embedding it into all of the social platforms, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. I'm feeling maybe that's going to be a play or a way for them to, keep people from using ChatGPT or products like it and competitors, but then also maybe have that ability to be kind of like an AI agent concierge where you could look up stuff and you could potentially book. And I don't know. So I have a feeling that AI is going to come into play with it. I'd be interested to see because what you said, Madeline, is very, very true, that you have so many different dynamic pricing pieces and date variables and all the other stuff. So I'd be interested to see how AI and the social media world kind of connect if they do. If they don't, it's kind of I don't know, feels like a wasted opportunity for AI, but could just be me.
Yeah, and on the subject of some of those variables, we also see that travelers in our studies, they say that there is a level of missing information on some of the social media content that's currently out there. So they feel like they lack op information on pricing if something is affordable to them. They lack some information on where certain options are and how to get there. And that's why we see that they're going to these other types of platforms before they actually go through with a conversion, and they're looking for more information. If you are making content for a property management firm or making content for a specific property, including a little more details. And I know it's difficult because everyone's using dynamic pricing and you can't necessarily promise certain prices for certain nights or anything like that. But if you can include just a bit more depth in information about the products you're offering, the properties you're offering, that can also be something really helpful, because guests often just feel like they don't necessarily have the right cues about whether something is for them or not, in terms of that pricing and in terms of that next level of information.
And I think that that kind of comes back to what is prioritized in social media, like the information, or when we were talking about kind of like the negative components of a stay, like that is not what father algorithm wants to see. It wants to see the sexy, shiny things. And so maybe there's a better way of embedding that information. So you have the kind of fun, flashy image or video or whatever, and then in the text kind of giving some more context. But there is also the reality of like what is going to get the engagement and what's going to get shown. And so that's probably why you're not getting the kind of the facts of the stay, when because that's not what's going to get clicked on.
Yeah, that was just my
Yeah.
question to you, Madeline. It's gonna be like, do you put that in the disclaimer, like in the text
Yeah.
or in the video? Like, where do you kind of slide that in? Just like, oh, also we're $500 a night minimum starting.
Yeah.
FYI.
You do see a lot more influencer posts now that actually have some level of pricing information or what they paid or a budget breakdown. And Expedia did this really interesting collaboration with one influencer who wanted to track pricing. That was more to see if it cost more or less than Seattle, I think, to live in a resort in Mexico. But again, it's becoming a bit more mainstream. That, oh, interesting collaboration to look into for another time. But it's
I saw that
becoming
one.
more mainstream to include some pricing and budgeting information. And sometimes it's just a quick pop-up on the screen of, this is how much I paid for 3 nights at this accommodation. I don't think that that level of deeper information needs to be sewn into every single piece of content that you post or that you think about. It's more about thinking about your overall strategy, the overall impression that your pages leave if you're on social media, and if that information is findable in a couple of posts, or if things are just buried, or if they need to leave the channel completely to get that level of information, then you have higher risk that they're going to forget your brand, or there's going to be some type of abandonment.
This this entire topic is wildly interesting to me, and it plays out in so many different ways, because some influencers are great for some stays and others are terrible, and it's a bit of a coin toss in knowing who's going to be good and who's not. And I'm curious, this more broadly speaking, not a specific question here, but I'm curious if anybody's working on quality influencer databases where there's ways to tell if someone converts in certain markets and certain demographics. Everyone has their demographics on who their follower base is, but does that actually lead to conversion? And then, Madeline, I want a hot take from you as to if you think there will be an OTA that becomes a social media site, or vice versa. Do you think in 5 years, can you book directly on Instagram, or is Airbnb a social media platform that also handles conversions?
I think there's interest in building on those add-on tools, but it's a question of when they're going to come to market, and then how sophisticated they're going to be for clicking through and finding something that seems right. But we do see some good indications about travelers' impressions of the OTA social media presence. They're seen as an account type that's really helpful for getting advice, probably because OTAs just show them such a range of options that it feels like a good browsing experience to find a right fit for them in terms of what's there. So I don't think we'll see them develop a whole new platform or anything like that. But in terms of add-ons, ways to connect in order to go straight to a booking, there's some indicators that they have some sway in that space because travelers already see it as a really helpful account type for getting them trip information. So I would keep an eye on it.
Okay.
Well,
So
I
I'll
think
take that
that
as a yes. Keep an eye on it means yes.
I think Airbnb really is doing that. I mean, their marketing and PR machine is just so magnificent and unrelenting. But I mean, to the extent that people now associate if they book something on Airbnb, regardless of like the product type, they're expecting like something that is Instagrammable because there is this kind of tie-in to seeing these incredible places on social media. And so even if you didn't maybe get to that one short-term rental through Instagram, in your mind, you're like, this is an Airbnb and it's going to be like this incredible thing to take pictures at, So my money is on them just because they are the kind of PR and marketing machine.
100%. Yeah, 100%. The endless cycle of content and PR. I love it. Well, go ahead.
Last comment. I know Meta's always listening to us, but Meta, I know you're listening. If you'd like me to broker a deal with Expedia, I think that would be a great marriage. So just holler at me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know Booking.com. There's a couple comments made in New York when Glenn Fogel was on stage talking about their social media strategy. I think it's still early, more content generated using obviously their advertising dollars for influencers and other type of like owned content, not having like them go make it. But I would be surprised if Booking.com didn't even try to slide in there. So
yeah, they've been having some great there. If anyone's watching Rings of Power on Amazon, they have like a bunch of Booking.com like Lord of the Rings related ads that are pretty good.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Madeline, thank you so much for being back on the show this beautiful Monday. Where can the listeners and live viewers find you to reach out if they're ever interested in more of this topic or other topics that you do research on? But then also, where are you going to be next? What's the next big event for you?
So on LinkedIn, you can find me with Madeline List. My research is available at focusright.com. And then the next big event that I will be attending is actually our own conference, the Focusrite Global Conference that is coming up in November. It's in Phoenix this year. It's the week before Thanksgiving. So for a lot more information and great speakers related to our industry, that is the next big one for my schedule.
I love it. Well, we're going to miss you at VRMA this year, but we know that you're going to be very, very busy getting ready for your own conference. So I guess we can let you off this one time. It'll be
this one time.
The excuse. Yes. Yeah, this one year.
Look forward to being back there another year.
Of course. Well, for all the Good Morning Hospitality listeners and live viewers, thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you like and subscribe. Find all things Focusrite and FocusWire, as they have both amazing content on each. And of course, like always, stay tuned for more Good Morning Hospitality content this week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.